Hello Chipmunk and Chipette fans, and welcome to another Alvin and the Chipmunks elaboration video. My name is Grandy Tamayas, and today's topic will be, should there be more Alvin and the Chipmunks comic books? So, much like my elaboration on Alvin and the Chipmunks video games, comics seems like another odd area of merchandising to talk about given its obscurity. But surprisingly enough, comics have been a part of the franchise since its early days. Starting in 1959, there was The Three Chipmunks, published by Dell Comics, which had the chipmunks with a more realistic design and clothes resembling what they wore on The Ed Sullivan Show. Then in 1962, Dell would publish an entire series of comics based on The Alvin Show, which ran for 28 issues, not counting specials or the 5-issue Clyde Crash Cup miniseries, and lasted until 1973. Then between 1992 and 1994, there were 5 issues published by Harvey Classics based on the 80s cartoon. Some of them were retellings of episodes, but many of them were original stories. And that's where the story of comics ends for the Alvin and the Chipmunks franchise. Of course, I could bring up some events that happen in comic stories in other videos, but for now I want to focus on why we haven't gotten any more comics based on the 21st century continuities. Honestly, even though the live-action continuity was lacking in diversity for several forms of merchandise, a tie-in comic book or comic book mini-series would have seemed appropriate for any of the 4 films. Sure, there was already some out-of-film fiction like junior books, but what little ancillary media there was still could have taken advantage of the medium of comics. But it's only on the subject of the 2015 series continuity where I think I can explain not only why there haven't been any comics for that version, but also the potential of such hypothetical comics if it were to ever happen. Now, I've been saving this point for another elaboration, but in the 21st century, Bagdasarian Productions has tightened their grip, so to speak, on the Alvin and the Chipmunks intellectual property. It's been less evident with the live-action films, but otherwise they have complete creative control, mainly when it comes to the current series. And they do have other writers too, but even then, there are some instances where the Bagdasarian family, mainly Janice Carmen and or Michael Bagdasarian, since they already do most of the writing for the show, rework the story, and sometimes you'll see the title card say, original pitch by whatever the person on the writing staff's name is. I want to go into more detail about the show's writing in the future, but for now I want to apply this to our comic book situation. If there were comics based on the current series, every story for it would have to be written and or approved by at least someone on the Bagdasarian family, probably most importantly Janice, since she's the director of the TV series, and managing that many storylines for ancillary media could be a lot of work, and they're busy enough as it is with the series. Now is a good time to mention that as I'm writing the script for this video, I'm explaining this hypothetical scenario under the presumption that they would not just adapt episodes that have already been made into comic form, like I mentioned with some of the 90s Harvey comics. Call me biased, but I would want something unique out of comics based on the current series. Getting back to that though, it is planned to have over 300 episodes across 7 seasons and last until at least 2025. Maybe even longer if the current state of the world has caused any delay in the production. That means over 300 individual storylines. Depending on how much of the creative well, so to speak, could be drained by 300 episodes, I'm not sure if they would have any storylines to spare for stories exclusive to comics. Now, by the end of this year, if everything goes well, we are getting a double-length Christmas episode, and it does open the possibility for storylines that aren't constrained by the 11-minute window of standard episodes. Again, I want to touch on this in another video, but the point I'm making here is that comics aren't usually constrained to fit a certain pace for a certain amount of time. They can pace the story however they want. If they want a story for humor that would only last 1 scene in an episode, they could do that. If they want to take more time to explore an episode's premise to its fullest potential, they could do that too. Okay, so let's assume that creative control and writer's block aren't a problem. If you've seen my other Should There Be More Alvin and the Chipmunks insert category of product elaborations, you might know the question I'm going to raise next. Would it make money? In other words, would modern Alvin and the Chipmunks comics sell well enough to its target demographic? Well, this is a tough case. Forgive me if I make any incorrect assumptions. I'm not an avid reader of comics, although I have been reading more of them recently. From what I understand, comics are still relatively popular with kids, even younger ones. I can't think of any specific examples, but I know there are modern cartoons similar to Alvin and the Chipmunks that sell comics. On the other hand, comics have also built up a reputation of being mostly for teens and adults, though that's mainly true of the sci-fi superhero ones. But there are also franchises like Sonic the Hedgehog, which, outside of comics, caters more towards kids, just like Alvin and the Chipmunks, and both have their fair share of older fans. However, while I haven't read the Sonic Archie comics, I have heard about some of the dark things that have happened in them. Basically, I would not want Alvin and the Chipmunks to go a little bit darker than the show already is in a different medium. And sure, there might be some Chipmunk fans who wouldn't mind a story in the Alvinnverse that takes itself even a tiny bit more seriously than the show, but I think Bagdasarian would prefer all their modern media to represent the same values and carry the same lighthearted tones and not cater any story specifically to older fans. I might have gotten a little sidetracked there, but if the Alvinnverse comics kept in the same spirit as the show, I guess regardless of whether they reuse the same stories as episodes or not, yes, I do think they would sell to kids well enough. But if you were to ask me how I would want modern Chipmunk comics to be, I would prefer original stories, like I've been saying. I wouldn't mind if they were written mostly or only by those in the Bagdasarian family, assuming that they have the time to write those stories, but I would prefer they utilize the other writing staff to keep things fresh. And lastly, I would want the comic to maintain some continuity with the show, like referring to events from past episodes. Comics would also be a good medium to expand on the lore of the series because Ross and Janice have hinted at the possibility of an origin story episode, and if they want to make an origin story that's more enriched with detail than they could put in an episode, they should make it a comic instead. Though I'm not sure what comic book company today Bagdasarian Productions would even collaborate with to do this, and I'd be worried that they would be too picky that they wouldn't find a comic book company that would fit their strict legal rights, limited liability corporation, intellectual property stuff. Anyway, feel free to let me know in the comments your thoughts towards all the factors relating to the possibility of new Chipmunk comics, or even how you would want them to be. Before I go, I would like to say that since I am now back in college, I won't have as much time to work on videos, so I'm going to take a hiatus for about a month or a month and a half, so that I'll have more time to catch up on my studies and make enough videos in advance for me to finish off the year. In the meantime, you can check out my new Discord server, where you can leave suggestions for future Alvin and the Chipmunks elaborations, post memes you'd like me to share in the next Alvin and the Chipmunks meme compilation video, and get some sneak peeks at upcoming videos. Don't forget that you're also welcome to leave a like, subscribe, consider sharing this video with other Alvin and the Chipmunks fans you may know, and with all that said, have a nice day. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for your time in watching it.